Then another signpost, which is very commonly heard all over AA, and the more you see in AA, and the older you grow in AA, the more you realize its truth, and that is, no case is hopeless. Believe me, no case is hopeless. I think most of you, and I know I have, seen individuals who wouldn't have a chance, so we thought. Suddenly they blossom out, and not only make good members of AA, not only stay sober, but become very solid citizens. No case is hopeless. I got quite a kick out of something that happened to me about 3 years ago when I first published Sobriety and Beyond. As many of you know, I do not have much to do with the handling of that. Staff at home does that, but one day I happened to be going through the orders, and lo and behold, here was an order from the psychiatrist who had told me 14 years ago that I was absolutely hopeless. Then another signpost is nobody ever tripped lying down. Which means get your rest. It does not necessarily mean slow down. Perhaps our personality is such that we can't slow down, but we can get more rest. We can get more rest. Then the next signpost is the one I mentioned in passing, do it. In other words, when something is to be done in my life, do it. Then at the end of the month, I won't have that big stack of things to do at the last day. Easy does it. Then another one is expect delay. What irritates us so much and what upsets us so much is when something suddenly happens to be an obstacle in our course of action. Whereas if we expect that, we're not surprised. After all, if I'm along the highway, driving along, come to a detour, what difference does it make? As long as they lift it in time to answer Gabriel's horn on Judgment Day. Then another one is, it's the effort, not the result that counts. After all, ours is only the footwork. The result is in the hands of God. That goes in business, that goes in our AA 12-step work, in everything. We have only the footwork. God gives the results or permits the failure. Then another one is, how important can it be? That thing or that circumstance or that person that's got me so upset now, how important is it in my life? Over a lifetime, what does it mean? Nothing. The saints used to have a saying. Many of them, we find it in their writings and in their lives. They would constantly remind themselves, what does this mean for eternity? Nothing becomes too important then. Then another one is, strive towards, but do not look for perfection either in ourselves or others. And this is so important. We have to become ignoramuses here, you know. Ignore the faults that we see popping up in our neighbors. They'll always be there. And in ourselves, they'll always be there. Till a day or two after we're dead. Something like that. After all that is expected, again, is the effort, the goodwill. We're human, and we'll have our faults until the day we die. So will our neighbors. But after all, when we point the finger at our neighbor, don't forget, there's 3 pointing right back at me. You know, so much trouble could be avoided in life if we would only accept the fact that other people aren't saints. They're not perfect. They're stinkers. Lots of the time. Even as you and I. That's human nature. Now let's see how these things that we have been discussing works out in our everyday living. And first in the home. To practice easy does it, we would be much more tolerant with the family. We wouldn't be yakking about the faults of our husband or of our wife so much if we practiced easy does it. We wouldn't push so much either with the husband or wife or with the children. We wouldn't expect perfection in the children. You know, the poor kids, the mother or the father says, "Why can't you be like the Jones boys? You never see them fighting." Of course you don't. They have the blinds pulled. And we hold over the head of the poor kid a pinnacle it'll never be able to reach as a child. Perhaps not as an adult. And if we look pretty close in ourselves, we won't even find it there. Easy does it. We will not punish in anger if we practice easy does it. Pat him on the head, you know. Get out of here! You know why so many parents rule by fear and by a whack over the ear instead of by teaching to love? Because it's so much easier and shorter. Love takes longer, but it lasts forever. To just take time out and teach our children to love us. If we have the respect and the confidence of our children, we won't need any rules. We won't need any rules. Then if the wife starts yakking all the time, well, let her yak. Ignore it. Easy does it. And if the husband clams up, let him clam up. That's the nature of him and her. So let him go. Easy does it. Then in business, first relative to our jobs, easy does it tells us that we're not the absolute all-important person for that job or that business. We can take a day off. It won't fold up. You know, many would be surprised if they knew the thousands, and I mean thousands, who of otherwise sincere members of Alcoholics Anonymous have slipped simply because they didn't let up on their job, on their work, working 18, 20 hours a day. And then the slip. The answer would be, well, I have to. And then they lose it all in one binge. That wasn't so good either. Easy does it. Then in our social life, many upsets come because we do not expect what actually is in other people. In other words, whatever I do with my fellow man, I will never have everyone to like me. No one will. There will always be somebody who is against me, and sometimes quite a few. Now, if I expect that, then I'm not going to be upset. Somebody criticizes, somebody talks about me, let them go. They're unhappy, they wouldn't be talking about you. And you will be talked about no matter who you are. Then, social climbing, you know, is quite reason that many people get upset because they don't climb as fast as they think they should. Instead of realizing that the status in which I exist is probably the best that God meant for me. and I will not try. And if I try, I will not expect too much. And if I expect anything, I won't be disappointed when it happens. Now, if we have that attitude ahead of time, then there will not be difficulty. Then in the spiritual life, someone might say, well, it says in the scriptures, be ye perfect. And I agree it does say that. But it doesn't say tonight. You know, I believe most alcoholics at one time or other in their lives set out to be perfect people. And night came, and they weren't perfect. They thought, the heck with it, give me a bottle. We must expect sins and failures in our own lives until the day we're dead. God permits those things. And therefore, if we expect them, they will not disturb us. Easy does it. This emphasizes the need of God. It emphasizes how little we have to do with our lives. You know, I used to hear a fellow or a gal in AA get up, and they would say, now I've been sober 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, whatever it was, and I have come to realize that I had nothing to do with it. God did it all. I used to think that was a lot of claptrap. But the longer you're in AA, and the more you mature in AA, the more you realize that conviction that I had nothing to do with it. God did it all. I'm not kidding myself tonight. There's only one reason that I'm sober tonight. There's only one reason that I'm in AA, enjoying all those advantages that AA gives, and that is because of the grace of God. God did it all. Many people fall into sins from their very haste. Take your person who tries to get in so many hundred prayers every day. There are such people. They don't get them in, discouragement, they give up. That's pride. Easy does it. Do what we can, do what we're doing, emphasize the ultimate, keep our eye on the ultimate end purpose of our own lives. And let every side issue go or come as it does. Easy does it. Meditation is one of the prime factors that the program gives us to practice spiritually. Easy does it. Because meditation is relaxation with God. In meditation, we actually relax with God. It motivates our living. It helps us to emphasize the ultimate. It helps us to practice easy does it. Then in our physical life, easy does it. After all, you can break an arm in 2 minutes, but it takes a long time to heal it. And yet we get very impatient with nature. Easy does it. In our mental life, the reason we're all screwed up so much or have snap judgment is because we don't practice easy does it. Wisdom comes as a result of meditation plus the grace of God. No one who does not practice easy does it can have much wisdom. Then emotionally, easy does it. Not only we as alcoholics, but all human beings will continue to have for the rest of our lives cycles of depression, cycles of elation, cycles of irritation, cycles of sleeplessness. Expect it. Accept it. Easy does it. Fighting against them only makes it worse. You know, an acute neurosis comes from being emotionally all tightened up. The doctors tell us that an acute neurosis, most of the time, is because the white tissue between the gray matter and the nerve system is in such a tense condition that the patient cannot voluntarily relax it. That's the reason they use the shock treatments, you know. The shock treatments relaxes that white tissue, like a PBX, you know, of a telephone system. And so when it all gets tensed up, it's just like pulling all the wires out and putting them in another hole in the PBX. You'd have a lot of conversation, screwy conversation going on. So the person with an acute neurosis, he has plenty of screwy conversation. All kinds of funny thinking, all kinds of funny feelings, because his PBX is out of whack. Easy does it. Then finally in our AA life, we should day in and day out never forget that AA is a readiness to give. AA is not to sober up drunks. AA is for me to keep sober and to give to whomsoever asks. Whether they stay sober or not is none of my concern. I have no surety that they will stay sober or that they will drink again. Whether they do or whether they don't is not under my own voluntary control. God takes care of that. A readiness to give. AA is also not to save souls. After all, that's the church's job. AA just wrings them out. We cannot sell AA. We're going to be very disappointed and irritated if we try to. We can only give it. And that will keep us from becoming too extremist in our practice of AA. It will keep us from becoming too pietistic. We will realize that AA will get new members by attraction, by merely simply telling them what happened to us. Here I was, here I am. By attraction, members will follow. And in conclusion, I'm going to make a statement that you can take home and chew on, digest it, or forget about it if you wish. And that is, easy does it means do it. But don't overdo it. And be always convinced that God will always provide. And may He love you all. Thanks for listening.